So I got to ask an interesting question. Speaking of the Pretty Woman theme, who had a better career out of Richard Gere and Julie Roberts? Now, when they first got together with the film Pretty Woman, which I recently did hindsight about the film, and sometimes I will pit actors and actresses because it's fair game. It's a good question to ask. Who had a better career? I remember Richard Gere's early work in the '70s. I remember Mr. Looking for Mr. Goodbar. And then I remember American Gigolo. Then I remember Officer and a Gentleman. He had some. He had some. He had was leading man. He had some big time films. And then when Pretty Woman came around, it was kind of like middle of the road. And he did a lot of films. They were hit and miss, you know. But he was the guy who kind of like played a certain type of role, which complimented him. Julie Roberts, still Magnolia, then I like that before Pretty Woman, then Pelican Brief with Denzel Washington, and so on and so forth. And she had some big films. So who had the bigger career? Well, she won the Oscar. And I mean, if that's your standard, she won more awarded. She got bigger. She got bigger. I think he was like big from an acting perspective in the standpoint that his roles were big, but I think the roles kind of were bigger than he was, if that makes sense. Because, for instance, he had films that did well. They were doing well because they were respected. But he came in, he was like the link between John Travolta and Tom Cruise, and he never had the kind of hit like they did. He had a hit and he was big, but they had a bigger hit. But he had the films that people remembered him in. They were more stylish. They were more geared towards a certain type of acting, and they didn't loan themselves into like, I don't want to say gimmicky, but I want to say something that was a niche that was catchy. And he didn't quite fit that criteria. His had more of a darker lean to it. He had, it was a more darker, earthy thing that worked in his favor, but it didn't make him like, it didn't like quite register like that. Whereas she was America's sweetheart, and it's interesting because in the roles that they play, even in Pretty Woman, he has this dark, swervy. You kind of wonder what kind of fringe, what kind of thing he's on, and she's like bubbly. She's always not super perky, but it got a pleasant, accessible type of demeanor. And I think that's what got her over with audiences. Because I mean, you know, Sandra Bullock